During his address to the UN General Assembly, Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim lashed out at Persian Gulf monarchies. Muallim accused the Arab states of supporting the extremist Islamic State militant group through financial and military means. Syria's top diplomat also slammed the US assistance for militant groups across the Middle East, calling it a recipe for terrorism.
Combating the terrorist threat is certainly possible through military strikes, but most importantly, to do so through stopping states that arm, support, train, fund and smuggle those terrorist groups. What we have witnessed on the part of the US administration is the practice of double standards and alliances to score certain political agendas, particularly through supporting them with money, weapons and training for these groups they call moderate. This is a real recipe for the increase of violence and terrorism.
Well, the US-led coalition's campaign against the so-called Islamic State militant group has entered its 7th day. This as the al-Qaeda-affiliated al-Nusra Front warned the West that it will pay a heavy price for its actions.
Fresh US-led strikes continue to target so-called Islamic State militant positions for the 7th day. The Britain-based Observatory for Human Rights said the alliance carried out strikes against IS strongholds in Raqqa province and Aleppo, further to the west of the country. 9 raids were launched on Tabqa airport in Raqqa, the de facto headquarters of IS in Syria. The town of Manbij, east of Aleppo, was also hit by the coalition, resulting in civilian casualties. But fears are growing that the US-led campaign is further pushing the militants to press ahead with their ground operations and even motivating terrorist organizations to unite. A senior al-Nusra Front source has confirmed to The Guardian that the al-Qaeda-linked group and IS are planning to hold a series of war planning meetings. Meanwhile, the leader of the al-Qaeda franchise in Syria, Abu Mohammad al-Julani, issued an audio message in which he warned the West that it will pay a hefty price for its actions.
فلن يقف المسلمون كجمهور يرى أبنائهم يقصفون ويقتلون في بلادهم وأنتم آمنون في بلادكم فضريبة الحرب لن يدفعها قادتكم وحدهم بل أنتم من سيدفع الجزء الأكبر منها.
Everything I've done.
Earlier, US President Barack Obama admitted that Washington had underestimated the threat posed by IS militants in Syria during an interview with CBS News. Syria has been plagued by the rise of the extremist group. Yet, Washington seems to have miscalculated its move to target IS, with many saying that the US-led coalition strikes have little to no effect on the extremist terrorist activities. If anything, the attacks are further aggravating the security crisis in the country.
Turkish tanks and armoured vehicles took up positions near the Syria-Turkey border as the IS stepped up its shelling in the area. At least 15 tanks were positioned near a Turkish military base just northwest of the border town of Ain al-Arab. Plumes of smoke rose as shells hit both the eastern and western sides of the town. Syrian Kurds are continuing to flee the fighting, with those seeking refuge across the border numbering in the tens of thousands.
The extensive campaign launched by Syrian Kurdish fighters against the so-called Islamic State in northern Syria has been met with a huge influx of Kurdish refugees out of Syria and into Turkey. Thousands of people have traveled on foot for miles to reach this border crossing, all seeking a safe haven from the grasp of the notorious Islamic State.
We fled from cruelty. The Islamic State dogs went to our village and destroyed our farming land. Now we cross to Turkey. I hope Turkey will accept us, otherwise we will seek shelter from the Arabs. We are running from the cruelty of the dogs.
We fled from artillery fire and arrived at the Turkish border. I hope Turkey will help us. If not, then we will go back to Syria to our houses.
For the time being, Turkey is playing the honorable host to these people, providing them with shelter and food. But Ankara had already angered many of its own Kurds, who say the policy to reject joining the coalition against Islamic State is a sign of not just abandonment of Kurds in Syria to the wrath of Islamic State militants, but also as collaboration with this brutal enemy.
Let's speak to Damascus-based journalist Mohammad Ali. Mohammad, 7 days into US airstrikes in Syria, are we seeing real damage inflicted on the Islamic State group? Well, we do apologise. We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties with Mohammad Ali, but we will bring in our next guest, Mudher Khairallah. He joins us from London. I want to ask you the same question, Mudher. We're seeing it's a week into these US airstrikes in Syria. Are we seeing a real damage inflicted on the IS?
I think there's no doubt that there is certainly damage inflicted on the IS. Reports on the ground and reports elsewhere do emphasize, do highlight this and do show this. We mustn't forget that this is a well-organized group. They've had at least two and a half years to regroup and structure themselves in order to declare a sovereign state within a couple of sovereign states, namely Iraq and Syria. This was due to a vacuum that was created by a lot of regional powers as well as Western powers that frankly procrastinated and underestimated the threat of this group. The airstrikes can only contain these groups that are currently swimming in a sea of tribes and fertile ground where they can restructure, they can move, they've got their control centers. I think what will happen is that what we can aim for is to have them contained in a particular region and hope that the tribes that are giving them fertile ground will turn against them. So I don't think a week is enough for us to make an assessment whether airstrikes at the moment are creating real damage.
Yes, and I want to go back to Mohammad Ali in Damascus. Now, given the fact that the IS is continuing to advance in northern Syria, what does that tell you about the effectiveness of this air campaign?
Yes, it doesn't seem that up till the moment there is any worth mentioning effect that those airstrikes are causing against the IS, the Islamic State, because as you know, though it has been only a week, but let's take a look at what we're still looking at the result and collecting comments from the U.S. Central Command that they destroyed the vehicle.
We do seem to be experiencing some poor connection with Syria, but I would ask Mudher, why is there a lot of mistrust among Iraqis over this anti-ISIS campaign, even though Iraqi Prime Minister Khairallah has assured them that there will not be a foreign intervention?
I think the lack of intervention or the delay intervention that Iraq has been seeking at the time of Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki and now Haider al-Abadi has created a lot of mistrust amongst Iraqis. There's a political agenda that was placed as a condition before the US military and other parts of the world would seriously take on ISIS. That, I think, has come at a very deadly, expensive cost of life and security and sovereignty of Iraq. I think that's where there's a general distrust amongst a lot of the Iraqi people. You have desperation in the military still. You have large military units in Anbar province surrounded by ISIL militia who are threatening to slaughter them like they had done in Speicher camp and other camps. You have ISIL literally 5 kilometers west of Baghdad threatening to spread its cancer to other vital organs within Iraq. And that's why there is a lot of mistrust within the Iraqis. It's just reached a stage where they feel that it might be just too late and that Haider al-Abadi's relationship and negotiation with the Western world, particularly the United States, might not be enough at this stage. That's, I think, where the mistrust comes, this desperation stage.
All right, we're going to try our luck with Mohammad Ali once more. Mohammad, if you can hear me, we have heard reports that there are Turkish tanks positioned on the border with Syria. How much of a threat is IS to Turkey?
From my point of view and point of view of many experts, it doesn't seem that the IS pose any threat to the Turkish government, because we have been seeing a lot of collaboration, a result of response by the Turkish government. Take, for example, if it was any other government, it would have, of course, felt that there is a serious threat on its borders, and it
All
would
right,
have
we are
attacked the IS
experiencing technical difficulties with Mohammad Ali, but we will keep them on the line and move on. For his part, the Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said that no foreign troops will engage with ground battles against extremist groups in Iraq. The Iraqi Premier added that the US-led coalition, which is bombing IS positions in the country, confirmed that it will respect Iraq's sovereignty as he pledged to protect civilians. This as the Iraqi army and Kurdish Peshmerga forces are stepping up their operations against the so-called Islamic State militants in the Diyala province in northern Iraq.
The Iraqi army is on the move. In its latest push against the IS, security forces have taken back a total of 16 villages held by the Islamic State militants in the eastern province of Diyala.
Troops of the 20th Armored Brigade of the 5th Division Command and troops of the 4th Brigade of the 1st Division, supported by brave fighters of the Al-Hasha Al-Sha'bi Command, have launched an operation to liberate captured areas in Diyala province. We have liberated almost all the areas, and the rest will be liberated soon, and the joy of Eid al-Adha will be doubled.
Today we are inspecting the last point near Anbar, Operation Command, or what is called the dividing line of the 3rd Battalion, to inspect weapons and troops and the defensive line across the Baghdad belt. It is a formidable defense line and we are satisfied with the measure in place. Our troops' morale is high and people of the area are cooperative.
The Kurdish Peshmerga forces are also making gains of their own. Kurdish fighters are holding their positions along the front line, overlooking the key city of Jalawla in the Diyala province.
The Islamic State group is a propaganda. They aren't strong in reality. Peshmergas are always ready on these mountains and the fronts to make sure that the extremes don't win.
Full-scale military operations have been underway in a bid to quell al-Qaeda-linked fighters, whose resurgence has killed hundreds of civilians, forced thousands to flee their homes, and inflicted severe damage on infrastructure.
Now I'd like to go back to political analyst Mudher Khairallah, who is joining us from London. Mudher, now as you just heard there in that report, the Iraqi army is making some significant advances even with these US airstrikes. How much do you think this is part of some sort of creep intervention into Iraq and Syria?
Sorry, are you saying that? Are you asking me whether this is something that is currently positive and it's? So if you can repeat the last bit of the question, sorry.
Yes, how much of these are they necessary enough? These US airstrikes, how overrated are they?
I don't think they're overrated at all. I think before our eyes we saw that the struggle that we had at the dam of Mosul, the struggle that we had on the outskirts of Erbil not long ago, the struggles that we had in the town of Amerli that withstood ISIL for a good 2 months. Without the airstrikes, I think we would have really struggled to make sure that the ISIL militia stepped back so that we could overtake that land. I don't think we can underestimate the vital part of the airstrikes. They have to be precise airstrikes, high technology airstrikes, with minimal collateral damage. I don't think it's a random occurrence that our troops are making advances as they are at the moment, because the airstrikes will contain ISIL.
All right, political analyst Mudher Khairallah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.